Now, three suspects have been indicted in the fatal shooting of a pregnant woman. They are accused in the January killing of 34-year-old Tameisha Price. Take a look. According to court documents, a grand jury indicted Paris James and Jerry Scott on several counts of aggravated murder and felonious assault, among other charges. Shawaya Triplett was also indicted on 2 third-degree felony counts of obstructing justice.
In Toledo, a 34-year-old woman, Tameisha Price, was approaching the final weeks of her pregnancy, preparing for the arrival of her daughter. Those around her observed a routine life, but within her relationship with Paris James, ongoing issues had begun to surface. Investigators would later uncover that he did not want the child and had repeatedly asked her to terminate the pregnancy, creating unresolved tension that remained behind closed doors. On January 24, 2024, emergency responders were called to her residence after concerns were raised. What they found inside immediately shifted the direction of the case. As investigators examined the scene, another name emerged, Jerry Scott, introducing a second layer to what initially appeared straightforward. The sequence of events, the timing, and the connections between those involved raised critical questions that would later define the entire investigation. You're watching Crimelens Uncovered, where the spotlight of social media casts the darkest shadows. From TikTok phenoms and Instagram couples to Facebook influencers, we peel back the filters to reveal the crimes behind the fame. Subscribe if you want the unfiltered truth behind the trending hashtags, because by the time a story explodes online, the tragedy has already happened. Now let's dive in. Tameisha Price was born on May 22, 1989, and was the youngest of 4 children and the only daughter in her family. She grew up alongside her 3 older brothers, and her early life included regular participation in family activities that reinforced close relationships within the household. She attended Rogers High School, where she completed her secondary education. After high school, she continued her studies in healthcare at Herzing University, focusing on a field that involved supporting individuals with medical and personal care needs. Her educational path reflected an interest in structured, service-oriented work. In her early 20s, Price became a mother to 2 sons, Jaden Kishan and Leslie Michael. Their upbringing formed a central part of her daily life. Jaden developed an interest in drumming, while Leslie showed a consistent focus on basketball. Their individual activities contributed to the structure of the household and influenced how time and responsibilities were managed. Outside of her responsibilities at home, Price maintained several personal interests. She engaged in traveling when possible, participated in modeling, and showed a consistent interest in fashion, often focusing on coordinated and styled appearances. She was also involved in content creation, which reflected a level of engagement with digital platforms and personal presentation. Her personal life included a previous relationship with the father of her 2 sons. Over time, that relationship ended following unresolved issues. The separation led to a shift in her household structure, with her assuming primary responsibility for her children. Her pregnancy shaped her daily activities during this period. She was preparing for the arrival of her daughter, Tameisha Price, which involved organizing her living space and focusing on readiness for childbirth. This stage required ongoing attention to health, scheduled appointments, and physical adjustments that influenced her routine in the weeks leading up to the incident. The relationship between Tameisha Price and Paris James had been stable for some time. Despite James's history of police disturbances, Price did not allow his past to affect their relationship and focused on their life together. The dynamic changed in late 2023, when Price discovered she was pregnant. She had already chosen a name for her daughter, Malaysia, and was preparing for her arrival, adding a girl to her family, which included 2 boys. James expressed that he was not ready for fatherhood. He questioned whether he was the biological father and accused Price of infidelity. Price maintained her decision to continue the pregnancy. She planned a baby shower and continued preparations for the child's arrival. Records and statements reviewed by investigators indicated repeated discussions between Price and James regarding the pregnancy, including his insistence that she terminate it. Friends and acquaintances noted the contrast between Price's acceptance of the pregnancy and James's reluctance. Although there were no reports of physical confrontations during this period, Authorities later considered these conflicts significant in understanding the context and interactions that preceded the events leading to Price's death. In the weeks preceding the incident, tension between Tameisha Price and Paris James increased. James repeatedly expressed that he did not want the child and urged Price to terminate the pregnancy. Investigators later identified patterns of controlling behavior, including efforts to influence her decisions regarding health, home, and social contacts. Friends and family observed signs of stress and agitation, although no formal warnings were issued. The involvement of Jerry Scott further heightened risk, creating a network that would later play a role in the planning and execution of the crime. While Tameisha Price prepared for her baby shower and organized her home for the arrival of her daughter, Paris James was planning a confrontation. Investigators later established that he, along with Jerry Scott and another individual, coordinated to confront her specifically about the pregnancy. In the days leading up to January 24, 2024, communications and movements among the three indicated planning and timing. While Price focused on her preparations, the suspects were arranging a confrontation that would escalate into violence. On the morning of January 24, 2024, before dawn, Paris James and Jerry Scott arrived at the residence of Tameisha Price. Both were armed. James immediately confronted Price, demanding that she comply with his requests to terminate her pregnancy and warning that she would be harmed if she did not follow his instructions. The interaction quickly escalated into a heated argument. At some point, Scott intervened, further increasing the tension. Price attempted to move into a bedroom to distance herself from the confrontation. During the continued argument, James drew a firearm and fired multiple shots, striking Price. Ballistics reports later confirmed that the shots were fired from close range. After the shooting, both men left the residence. Emergency responders were called to a residence in Toledo, Ohio, after the son of Tameisha Price reported that his mother had been shot and was unresponsive. Officers arrived at the location and approached the home with caution. Inside, they observed signs of a violent confrontation, including displaced personal items that indicated a struggle had occurred prior to the emergency call. Price and her unborn daughter, Malaysia Price, were both declared dead at the scene. The situation was classified as a homicide investigation. Law enforcement secured the scene and conducted a detailed documentation process. Photographs were taken, and potential evidence, including traces of a firearm and fingerprints, was collected. Neighbors and witnesses were interviewed to determine whether any unusual activity had occurred prior to the incident. Investigators focused on identifying possible suspects by examining Price's known contacts and relationships. The information provided by her son, combined with the condition of the home and the evidence collected, established a basis for a thorough investigation into the circumstances that led to the fatal shooting. As the investigation progressed, law enforcement focused on Paris James, the victim's boyfriend, as the central figure. Investigators reviewed phone records, text messages, and social media activity to establish patterns of communication and identify potential motives. Records indicated that James did not want the baby and had repeatedly pressured Tameisha Price to terminate her pregnancy. These interactions provided context for determining premeditation. Authorities also identified Jerry Scott as a key individual in the events. Communications and location data placed Scott in proximity to Price's residence and indicated coordination with James. Evidence suggested that Scott assisted in carrying out the attack. A third person, Shatwia Triplett, was investigated and charged with obstruction of justice. She was not involved in the murder, but authorities examined whether she interfered with evidence or attempted to conceal aspects of the crime. Triplett was later acquitted of all charges. The investigation clarified each individual's role: James as the planner and instigator, Scott as the accomplice who assisted in the attack, and Triplett as the third suspect investigated for obstruction.
All three suspects are accused of involvement in the homicide of Price, whose unborn child was also killed in the shooting. According to court documents, detectives say Scott did participate in the planning and execution of the plan that resulted in Price's death. Those documents also indicate that Triplett, who detectives said is James's live-in girlfriend, provided an alibi for James that was later proven to be false.
After evidence connected Paris James, Jerry Scott, and Shatwia Triplet to the incident at Toledo, law enforcement executed coordinated arrests. James and Scott were taken into custody separately and formally charged. Both men were indicted on aggravated murder, including the death of the unborn child, as well as related firearm and conspiracy charges. Triplet was charged with obstruction of justice. All three suspects were processed and interrogated under supervision. Authorities provided a factual briefing to the public regarding the charges and procedures. After the arrests of Paris James and Jerry Scott, both men pleaded not guilty to aggravated murder and related charges involving the unborn child, Tameisha Price. The trial was delayed when the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, BCI, found DNA from an unidentified male on the murder weapon. This discovery required additional review by both sides. The prosecution emphasized that James had repeatedly pressured Price to terminate the pregnancy, supporting motive and planning. The defense questioned the relevance of the new DNA. Jury instructions stressed evaluating all evidence before determining responsibility and intent.
At 6 this week, the trial for two men accused of shooting and killing a pregnant woman is set to start, but now they want a delay. Prosecutors allege the pair planned and carried out the murder of Tameisha Price, who was 9 months pregnant. But now new evidence has come to light. 13 Action News reporter Alexis Means is live with this story, all new at 6.
Sasha, the newly discovered evidence indicates that there's a third person's DNA on the murder weapon. The attorneys for Paris James and Jerry Scott filed a motion saying they need to investigate the new evidence turned over to them by the prosecutor. According to these court documents filed this month, a piece of evidence in the case tested by BCI found another male's DNA on the murder weapon. It led prosecutors to investigate this person. James and Scott are accused of aggravated murder in the killing of Tameisha Price. They're accused of planning and executing the plan that resulted in the 34-year-old woman's death. Price was 9 months pregnant with James's child. Neither Price nor the baby girl she was carrying survived. The deadly shooting happened inside the woman's home last year. There is a third person charged in this case, Shatwia Triplet. She's charged with obstructing justice. Her attorney says she will not be tried with the men.
I filed a motion to sever her case from the other two defendants on the basis she was just charged with one count of obstruction of justice, and I didn't want that case being tried. My case will be tried after the other two cases are tried.
Triplet is accused of lying to police about the whereabouts of Paris James. Now, the defense wants to be able to investigate all this new evidence. We'll let you know if the judge agrees to continue the case.
The murder of Tameisha Price and her unborn daughter impacted both her family and the Toledo community. Family members cooperated with authorities, providing crucial information on disputes and timelines that shaped the investigation. Local residents and organizations increased awareness of domestic risks, particularly involving pregnancies, and reviewed safety and reporting protocols. Law enforcement reevaluated response procedures for domestic disputes, while advocacy groups and healthcare providers shared guidance on identifying coercion and threats. The case prompted systemic reflection on prevention, legal protections, and community preparedness, emphasizing practical measures to reduce similar tragedies. Tameisha Price lived a life defined by routine, responsibility, and preparation for the future. As a 34-year-old woman nearing the final weeks of her pregnancy, her daily focus was on providing stability for herself and preparing for the arrival of her daughter, Tameisha Price. Those around her observed a person managing her responsibilities with diligence, maintaining her home and planning for her family's future. Despite challenges within her personal relationships, she continued her routines and fulfilled her obligations, showing a commitment to her family's well-being. The tragedy of her murder has prompted an outpouring of concern and support from the community. In response, funds and initiatives were established to provide for her surviving children, ensuring that resources are available to support their immediate and long-term needs. These efforts aim to honor her memory by offering stability and opportunities for the children she would have cared for. While her life was cut short, the financial and community support raised in her name represents a tangible legacy, reflecting her role as a mother and a figure around whom others rallied, ensuring that her family continues to receive protection and care. And that concludes today's case. But remember, This is just one of countless hidden stories waiting to be brought to light. Here at Crimelens Uncovered, we're committed to digging beneath the surface, giving a voice to those who can no longer speak, and making sure their stories are never lost to time. If today's investigation gave you new perspective, just wait. There are more cases coming that will shock, disturb, and challenge the way you see the world. So don't forget to subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on notifications, so you're always first to know when a new story drops. We release fresh investigations regularly, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's next. Before you go, share your thoughts in the comments. Which part of this case resonated with you most? Your voice helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and remember, the search for justice always begins with the truth. Crimelens Uncovered, where every case finds its voice.